designers and other creatives. So please join me in welcoming Rick Dakan and a very special clap in the house because it is Rick's birthday.
Woo! Thank you. Well, I appreciate you all coming to my birthday party. I look forward to all those presents. So welcome, everyone. Teaching AI in the classroom is our topic this evening. I'm wearing the headset because I tend to wander, and I'm definitely going to turn and look to the screen at various times, and I want to make sure you can hear me. I'm going to start with asking you some questions. But first, a little bit, we got this nice introduction. If you have any questions after this, you can feel free to email me. You got to take a picture of that, or you can hit me up afterwards, and I'll give you a card. We got people whipping out their cameras here. We'll put it up again at the end. So I'm happy to answer your questions. A lot of the stuff we're going to see is AI generated, but this little caricature was drawn by my colleague, Gary Barker, who's a great, great illustrator. So shout out to Gary for capturing the essence of me. I'm not going to read all of this, but this is my due diligence, which I think is really important, that I used a bunch of different AI tools for the creation of this talk you're about to see. A lot of the images, not all of them, but a lot of them are generated with AI. Also the organization of the text and some of the composition of the text was done with AI, but I am vouching that these are all my thoughts. I have vetted all of the information you're about to see, and this is my message to you, some of it mediated through AI. So with that in mind, quick show of hands. I'm glad I can see the hands out there. Raise your hand if you have ever used a tool, text generation tool like ChatGPT or Claude. All right. I was supposed to ask this question. Does anyone need me to explain what AI stands for? All right, we're all on board. We got artificial intelligence. I'm going to give you a little more technology. Okay, so almost everyone raised their hands for using one of these tools. What about voice generation tools like 11 Labs, right? All right, we got a handful of people. Interesting. What about music generation tools like Suno or Udio? We got a power user up here, so there's two of us in the room who've used Suno and Udio. What about code generation like Cursor or Copilot to write computer code? Oh, we got a few people in the back. There we go. What about video generation like Runway or Sora? Right? Not as much there. Again, our power user up front here. So I went through these, and this is about typical. Most people have used the text ones. Fewer people have used those other tools. Those tools are powerful and interesting too. Most people don't know about those. We're not going to have time to talk about the voice and the music and the code tonight, but it's worth knowing that's out there. We will talk a little bit more about video. What about this one? Who has used an image generation tool like DALL-E, all right, or Midjourney? Who has done the dream tapestry upstairs? All right, so great. So you all are familiar with that, and that's going to be a lot of what I'm going to talk about here tonight. So I do want to talk some about how image generation works with AI, because it is strange, and I think it's important to think about how strange these tools actually are, because they feel so easy and familiar. So we start with a massive pool of data, right? Words matched with images. And the AI models are trained on millions or billions of these word-image pairs, and they're looking at them, and they're discerning patterns, right? And that's the key learning that is happening for the artificial intelligence. It's analyzing those image caption pairs and identifying patterns and relationships between the visual features and their textual descriptions. Just looking at a bunch of them, getting some reinforcement, maybe from another AI checking it or from other humans. And so the end result of that is that when it's learning those patterns, it's encoding those just as numbers. So it's not making a copy of the picture and saving it in some big database somewhere. It's looking at that picture and that word combination and turning it into a string of numbers. And then where it gets even weirder and harder for us to wrap our head around is that number represents a space in vector space. So is also called latent space. So we can all picture, right, three-dimensional space, right? I'm this close. this way, this tall, right? We can picture 3 dimensions, and somewhere in that space, we can give the x, y, z coordinates. Y'all with me? All right, and that's as far as our minds can picture, right? We got 3D down. After that, it gets beyond our imagining. For the AI, there's no limit to that number, and that space is thousands of dimensions. It's thousands of dimensional space, which only really works in math, and it only really sees it as numbers, right? This visualization is not an actual visualization of latent space, it's just meant to overwhelm you, right? It's just meant to say it's real complicated and you can't really picture it. But what's important is that when you put an image into that space and it's figuring out all these dimensions, it's looking at, say, okay, here's an image of a red apple. And it's saying, all right, on the A axis or the number 1 axis, that's roundness. And the next one, it's number 2 is color, and then texture, and then size, and then position, and then material, and all these different things, lighting, green undertones, surface imperfections, variety, all those sorts of things. Thousands of other values. I really do need to emphasize that these are all made up, and it's not actually doing these kinds of values. It's making up its own sort of understanding of what it is. It's all math. But what that means is that it's in space, is that every image in that space is a certain distance from every other image in that space. And that's what's important, because it cares about how close in that space these different images are. So similar images are closer to each other in latent space. So a red apple might be close to a green apple, might be close to a pear, but also it doesn't know any other context. So it's also close to an iPhone from Apple and a laptop from Apple. But, confusingly enough, it might have a different understanding of the word apple in the context of computers versus apple in the context of fruit versus apple in the context of record labels, right? So it all gets complicated, but the important thing is that the similar things are close to each other in space. Are we with me? All right. And so, the opposite is true. Dissimilar objects are far away from each other in space. And so there is this mathematical relationship that can be expressed in multidimensional geometry that you can do math on. And so the elephant and the apple are far away, but when you're generating new images, when you type into one of these tools, give me a picture of this, what's going on? It's creating new images from those patterns it has learned, from that latent space it's formed, by not simply copying and pasting, right, of images that it's looked at. This is a misunderstanding that I've heard a lot of people have. They think, oh, it's looked at a million images. When I want an image of an apple, it's going to copy and paste pixels from other images of apples it's seen and put those together. And that's not what's happening at all. What's happening is it's doing some math, and it's navigating that space. And it's going to blend the concepts to create something entirely new by finding that point in multidimensional space that is the project of some linear algebra that I don't understand, that gets it to a space in that latent space. And so all of these tools, if I prompt a combination, as I did here with Midjourney, of an apple and an elephant, are filling in the gaps and finding a space within that the images it's been trained on and adding them together. Are you with me, right? And so that gives you some really interesting possibilities. When you combine things that are far away from one another in latent space, you can get really novel, interesting, let's face it, kind of disturbing combinations, right? So that's what's going on. It's really interesting and creative and strange, and it's not how any of our brains work, I don't think. Maybe it is a little bit about how our brains work. We kind of smash. Someone in this room once told me creation is just smashing 2 ideas together and seeing what happens. He's laughing, he's over there. But an important thing to remember when you're using these tools is AI is not good at giving you the idea in your head, right? Because it's just going to do some math, there's some randomness thrown in there, and so if you have a pristine vision, a creative idea, I know exactly what I want, it's not going to be able to give you that, right? So for example, you have all seen the staircase? All right, I took this picture last year. And then say I wanted to recreate this picture, right? I want to get a picture of a spiral staircase in the Dali Museum, and I know exactly what it looks like. So I put that, right? I went to the website for the museum and learned why the museum is that shape it is. And I said, okay, so this double helical shape of the DNA molecule, all right, I'm going to turn that into a prompt. The prompt is the text you give to the AI to ask it to generate an image, right? Because it has been trained on images combined with text descriptions, right? It knows those relationships. So I said, a photo of a staircase in the style of Salvador Dali that spirals up in the shape of a DNA molecule inside a modern art museum. Okay, so who wants to bet we're going to get something that looks like what we started with, right? Of course we're not. Right, this was Dali, right? These are fun, right? You know, not practical, but interesting, yeah. This is Google Gemini. Gave me some interesting ideas, right? Really leaning in to the molecule there. And these are pretty much the first generations that came out at this time. I didn't spend a lot of time curating these. I took the first things that came out. This is Midjourney. Now it's saying, okay, it kind of latches on to that in a modern art museum and says, okay, well, I'm going to do a photo. Midjourney is quite good at doing things that look like photos. So we get some things that are inventive. They're reminiscent of what's outside, right? But not exactly the same, obviously. Leonardo AI, which is built on stable diffusion, similarly gave us some nice photos. You can, you know, this seems reasonable. This seems reasonable. This is cool. This is more like a sculpture than a usable staircase. But, you know, we're in there. Adobe Firefly gave me this. It really honed in on wood for whatever reason. There's an asterisk there. We'll come back to that in a minute. And by a minute, I mean like 10 or 15 minutes. But this shows us one of the things using AI to generate images, the experience of those of us who've tried to get anything precise out of AI, is this struggle for control. It's not good at giving you that image in your head. So if you want something specific, text prompts alone are not going to get you there. Text prompts will give you all kinds of fun images. We just saw a bunch of interesting, compelling ones, and some would be used in a sort of surrealist fever dream. Some might be something you'd give to an architect that was inspirational. But this is something that all of these AI generation tools are striving to solve, this struggle, right, to give humans the edge up over the machines in taking control of these image outputs. So what I'm now going to share with you are some tools that can give a user more control over those outputs. And this is where I think these tools get a lot more interesting than just write in a prompt and get out an image. So the tool I'm going to show you is Crea AI's real-time mode. And what's going to happen here, I'm going to show you a little GIF, and we're going to see this working. I'll just let you watch this for a minute. So what's going on here is we have a text prompt that you can't read, but it's the same text prompt I used for the other ones, the staircase inspired by Salvador Dali. And over here, whatever I do on this canvas is going through the prompt and in real time affecting what happens over on the other side. And then you can see me down here moving a slider for how strong I want the AI influence to be. So this is all happening in real time. This is actually like a low frame rate GIF that I put up here because I didn't want to rely on a video connected over the internet. So it's a little smoother than that when you're actually using the tool, right? And you can tell I'm a really talented artist. So I'm just doing some scribbling, I'm doing some stuff, but we're getting interesting results. So I wanted to show you this so you can understand the context for the pictures I'm going to show you of my actual process of working with the staircase. So the first thing, this was my original photo, and I had these lovely individuals here, and I was like, I don't want a picture of them, I want a picture of the staircase. So I used Adobe Photoshop's generative fill, and I highlighted those people, and it just edited them out, and did a pretty good job replacing them. So this is then the image I'm going to work with. So first step was to use Adobe Photoshop's generative fill, which is an AI tool. So then what did I do here? You notice these are not the same, right? We have a different person there. There's someone up there. This is kind of entirely different. So this is the original image I put in as my input. And I've turned the AI power way, way down. And I've also put my image here as another input. So this image is like double strong in there. So this is the AI generated version. So it's taking the image I put in and the image I put in again. I doubled it up. And it's recreating it pretty close, right? And if I turn this all the way down, it would be pretty much identical. So that gives me a starting place, right? I want to play around with AI with this photo I took of this real place. Okay. So then I just started playing around with the sliders here. And we get, this kind of variation on the theme, much less interesting staircase. But we're just playing around. So I changed, I think I added Surrealist Art Museum into the prompt at this point. And I don't know, this looks like it's in somebody's home, right? We moved out of a museum into a sort of a folly of a home with this space not really accessible. But okay, I'm like, okay, so it's doing some things. So now I'm going to add in a little more flavor. I'm going to add in another element into its approach. So here, I put in an illustration style, right? Just a line art, black and white art style. And so now, okay, it's getting pretty interesting, right? This feels like a nice surreal piece of art. And so I tried some other styles, and I got this kind of, Art Nouveau stained glass thing going on that I thought was pretty interesting. I got another one of these, sort of steampunky vibe. We're losing a lot of the details over here, but you get the gist. The composition is still there. So then I was like, okay, let's go back to a class, something that we know Dali is really fascinated with. And one of the paintings, you can go see it upstairs. So this, I went to the Dali website, and without any permission, sorry, Beth, I just screenshotted this image, and now I put that in as a style input. All right, so I put that image in there. Okay, now this was getting kind of interesting. And I'm like, okay, I feel like we've got the thing, but the DNA element maybe has been lost. And so then I went to Source Plus, which is a great resource for public domain and copyright zero images. And I got this image of a DNA double helix, and I said, I'm going to add that in to the mix as well. And so now I've got both of those two things in there, right? So I have my picture, the Dali painting, the DNA image, right? All mixed together. And I'm getting more of that vibe. So then you can just paint, you can put things on this image over here. And I was like, we've got this kind of empty space up here. I'd like to get something up there. I was going to try and get a sun. This was not great. This was not working well. Although you see it's starting to cast some light onto things, which is kind of interesting. Then I tried, what if we put a Dali's face up there? So this can generate a 3D image, and you can adjust where it is. And actually, this kind of got interesting. We lost, the Dali-ness that was already only kind of vague disappeared in this, but I kind of liked that, felt a little creepy. But this wasn't really going a direction I wanted, and this happens all the time in AI. But I should emphasize that this process took me 8 minutes, right? And I'm just sort of picking and going through it. It took me as long to capture the slides and put them into the slide deck as it did to generate the images. But I did finally get somewhere. I skipped a lot of steps that I liked. I liked the surrealness of this space, this sort of outside thing. I liked where it turned kind of the canvas, where it ends and begins. It sort of feels like it's in a museum. We've got we did finally get something up there that I liked. So I thought this felt Dali-like for me. It felt like we were both engaged with the shape of the stair, but also with the input images. And I just liked looking at it. So I then took that, and then I had it enhance it. You can see the little enhance button up there. Just to make it higher res, sharpen some of the detail. Can you even tell the difference from where you are? Okay, good. Right, so this was the image that I was pretty happy with, okay? I was like, so what can I do with that now? So I'm going to take that image, I was like, well, let's take that image and we'll play around with Dali's, inspiration for his painting that we started with. So I went to Source Plus and they had that, which was lovely of them. And from Wikimedia Commons, Millet's The Angelus. And so now I put my new image in there and I put Millet's image in as an input and playing around with that. And so, okay. And so we're sort of Dali by way of Crea back to Millet, and we're getting some interesting. So I did a couple of these. I like this one actually too. And I think this one was also pretty interesting. So I got some interesting things. Those were fun and I enjoyed that. But ultimately, I didn't like any of these as much as sort of where I'd gotten here. So I went back to this. I'm like, okay, this is my finished piece. I present to you. I don't know. I didn't even name it. I should have named it. Do we have a name? Any suggestions? So it's Reminiscences on the Angelus is the name of the original. Reminiscences, it's gone. Thinking about the staircase. All right. So now here's a thing that I can also do some fun stuff with. So I took this image and I put it in a couple different image to video AI tools. So I just asked it to pan up the image, and then we got these creepy people. I love this, though, right? So that's good. I like that one. This one I actually like a little better. Runway ML. Yeah, I'm happy with that, right? That's a cool little thing. So things I can't do. I can't paint. I can't draw. I am vaguely proficient at Photoshop, but not really. I definitely can't animate, right? But I was able to bring and share you all this thing, which I think was cool and fun. I do want to point to someone who can do all of those things and use AI tools really, really well, which is an artist named Kirsten Zerngebel. You can check out her work at zernworks.com. And she was our keynote speaker at our AI and Creative Innovation Symposium at Ringling College of Art and Design. And so if you're interested in someone really using these AI tools at a high level, you can go watch her hour-and-a-half talk on YouTube and see some really amazing things. So check that out on the Ringling College of Art and Design YouTube channel. So that's someone who uses those tools in a really compelling way. And we're going to talk about things Adobe Firefly won't do. Remember I had that little asterisk by Adobe Firefly. So when I asked it to generate these images, it said, uh-oh, Firefly doesn't generate content featuring famous people or brands. Right? So it didn't like that I used the word Salvador Dali, and so it edited out automatically the prompt and gave me something else. So Firefly only generates images of public figures available for commercial use on the stock website. So Adobe's only using images that it has the rights to. And so this was the actual prompt, right? I was like trying to get it a little more surreal Dali-y, and so I said a famous surrealist painter, and I got something a little more like that, so there's a little workaround. Dali does let you input an image and have that influence your output. And it asked me if I had the rights to that image, and I assured it that I did. Sorry again, Beth. But, got some interesting, fun kind of things out of that, right? Not the same kind of real-time canvas and all those tools I was showing before. But it points to a bigger issue that it's really important that we talk about. Remember when I said that these tools were trained on massive data sets of images matched with words? Well, a lot of that was images scraped from the internet without any permission, maybe asking for forgiveness like I've been asking for it here today, right? So there are some problems with AI that it's really important that we recognize and talk about. Many, many artists and designers and musicians and other creatives, including faculty and students at Ringling College, really hate AI for reasons I'm going to go into. And then these are not at all in any way, shape, or form unreasonable. They are totally reasonable concerns. This is the big one, sourcing images without consent of the creators, right? That feels like a violation to a lot of artists. And it does make a lot of these tools possible. Thus, we have a great many lawsuits that have been filed by creators and rights holders against these companies that make these tools. And we'll see, all of these are in the courts. All of these will be winding their way through the courts for the next X years, right? But the tools keep coming out, the tools keep moving forward. The argument that the companies make is that this is fair use, that you are allowed to use things in this way under current copyright law because the use is transformative, they're not derivative works. I'm not going to go in, I could. If someone has questions, we can talk about fair use afterwards. Copyright Office just released a bunch of findings yesterday, not related to this. We can talk about that in a minute. But there is an argument. There is precedent with the Google Books case where Google scanned a bunch of books without any permission, and the courts found that that was fair use because their use was transformative to make a database searching these things. So we'll see. That case took, I think, 8 years to get settled. So we've got that, and didn't even go to the Supreme Court. Adobe, though, they have taken a pretty firm stand on this, right? This is, I think this is an honestly held belief, but also it's clearly they see it as a market differentiator. They want creators to feel comfortable using their tools. So they have all of these different things, right? We only train Adobe Firefly on content where we have permission or rights to do so. And I think that's really great and laudable. We're not going to read all this, but they've taken this firm stand. They're very forward with it. And I'll say that like many of my students are more comfortable using Firefly because of this reason. Another big concern that creators of all types have is the job loss that is likely or is in fact being realized because of these tools, right? We've seen this before. The most famous example that gets bandied about at where I teach is the birth of desktop publishing, right? And the total disruption of what the skills are for a graphic designer or for a person doing layout once desktop publishing came in. But the difference here is that there's no person to learn those no skills necessarily. There's an AI who's going to be doing it. So this is a big concern. There are copyright questions. Again, I should have updated this slide last night because the Copyright Office just released sort of a new set of statements about can AI work be copyrighted? Can AI work be copyrighted? Thoughts? Yes, no? Shout it out. Sort of. So here's what they said. No. If you prompt something, the output of that cannot be copyrighted. You need to be a human to get copyright. So I can get a copyright if I took a picture of you because I'm the one clicking the button and I framed it up. But because when you're generating an image or text or music or anything with these AI tools, it's searching through that latent space and doing some math. You have no control over the actual generation of the thing. The copyright has doubled down on that. You cannot copyright that. However, if you go through a process and there's more that goes on and there's some back and forth and decided on a case-by-case basis, then there is room in there to copyright things made with these tools. But I think an important thing for a lot of industries is they did very clearly say, if you make a bigger work, like a movie, and it has AI content in it, you can copyright that. Like technically the little AI parts aren't copyrightable, but the work is. And so I think that we'll see more adoption in industry because of that. Another big, huge concern, right, is as they've gone and scooped up all of this data, it only knows the patterns that it's trained on, and it doesn't know anything outside of that, right? And so the internet was the source for a lot of the initial data for things like ChatGPT, and the internet is mostly written by Americans, mostly written by white Americans, mostly written by younger white Americans, mostly written by younger white male Americans, right? And so it has that inherent bias in the data. And all of the companies are working in various ways to mitigate that and refine their training data and make it less biased and more representative, but that's an uneven process. We've seen some sort of disastrous attempts at that, but also some very good ones. But, you know, you ask it, what does a doctor look like? It's most likely going to be a white male unless the thing has been trained not to do that, which more and more of them are. So those biases are in there, and those are the easy ones to see. Those are the ones we as creators can be like, well, I don't want my doctor to look like that. I'm going to prompt my doctor to look like what I want. It's the biases we don't see that live in there. My favorite example of this isn't really a bias, but it's an interesting thing. Has anyone read or seen or used ChatGPT? And it, especially a year ago or more, it really liked the word delve. We're going to delve into the subject of X, Y, or Z. Is this familiar? I see some nodding. Delve is not a very commonly used word in American Standard English, right? It's not, but it's much more common in English spoken by Nigerians. And Nigerians were being paid to give feedback on the outputs to help train the AI. And so they were reading a bunch of sentences saying, yep, that's a good sentence. And so this little bias towards the word delve crept in because the people being paid to give feedback on it put their thing into that. And that's not bad. There's nothing wrong with the word delve, but it's a good illustration. Well, what else is hiding in there, right? What other biases would otherwise be invisible to us? So, and there are so many more. There are so many more problems. I have no idea where I'm at on time. Oh, we got plenty of time. All right. So, environmental impact, devaluation of art and artists, privacy concerns, cost in the digital divide, erosion of critical thinking, deepfakes and fraud, drowning in a sea of AI slop, and so much more. So why use these tools if there are so many problems associated with them? Well, I think the first answer is, yeah, maybe we shouldn't, right? Maybe you don't want to use these tools. But if you are going to use them, as I use them every day, it means answering some tough questions. You need to have, you're taking a stand about creators' rights, the legal implications. You need to be thinking about the industry standards and what your use case is going to be for that. Biases, both obvious and hidden, you need to be trying to take account for them. And you need to be transparent about usage, as I was in the beginning of this talk. All of those need answers that you should give honestly and carefully. But here's the other thing, right? Here's why. Because AI tools enable new possibilities. So maybe we should use them, right? They can make the inaccessible things more accessible, right? They make creating images more accessible, writing readable words more accessible, creating video, voice, music, computer code, learning new skills, all more accessible, more available at various levels of competency and effectiveness, right? But all of these things are getting better all the time. As someone talking to other, on a stage to other people about AI, I am now obligated to say, this is the worst it will ever be. It's just getting better. So I should qualify, this was the least powerful AI will ever be, right? The least effective at what it does it will ever be. So we need to be thinking about that. So AI is full of problems and possibilities, and it has no easy answers, but we do ask that you think about it. But here's a reason to do it. Here's why we're engaged with it at Ringling College of Art and Design. I've been very nice to Adobe, so I'm going to put this in here where they kind of look like jerks. But they're not wrong, I don't think, right? That like Adobe execs say artists need to embrace AI or get left behind, right? These tools are useful and powerful and can do interesting, cool things. And they're being embraced unevenly but continuously in industry. So you can download this for free, this Future Unscripted report. It's a year old now, but full of interesting things commissioned by the Animation Guild and the Concept Art Association. And the look at talking to 300 C-level leaders at entertainment companies. And I have just a couple slides. There's a lot of interesting information, but 3/4 of the survey, and this is the survey's a year and a half now old, indicated that Gen AI tools, software, and models had supported the elimination, reduction, or consolidation of jobs in their business division. So they're using it in interesting ways. Firms surveyed considered early adopters of AI programs. 90% of businesses leaders foresee Gen AI playing a larger role in the entertainment industries, with 26% saying it would be significant in the next 3 years. So this is why we at Ringling have to take this seriously and have to take this on. But there's hope in there, right? All the same people surveyed, like what is the number one thing we want from people? Creativity, right? And how to use these tools and an understanding of what art and design and creativity are, whatever their field is, right? And that's all stuff we can teach. That's all stuff our students can master. So, in response to that, we launched an initiative to really take these things on, address these questions, think hard about all the questions I brought up. So for us at Ringling, right, those fundamental art and design skills remain paramount. We think those are what are going to separate our students from others. So the second thing I'm obligated to say as someone who stands on a stage and talks about AI to people in an audience, you're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to someone who knows how to use AI. That's the bromide. That's the conventional wisdom. It definitely seems like there's a nugget of truth there, maybe a big, huge, like mountain of gold of truth. So we're not replacing our studio art courses with AI, right? These are augmentations, because we have to educate students about, all the kinds of things I've been talking about tonight, and we have to do it in more than the 40 minutes you guys have had with me. So we launched an undergraduate AI certificate program, which is the first of its kind at an art and design college. And it's a 3-course sequence that students can take. I teach one of the classes in that program, or sometimes 2. And we're getting a lot of interest, right? A lot of students are interested in this because they see how it's important. A lot of graduates are coming to us and saying, gosh, I wish you'd had that because employers are asking me about it. So what are we teaching, though? Right? What are we teaching in this class, right? We are teaching how to use these tools. It's a part of what we're doing. More importantly, we're teaching how to think about these tools and how to decide whether or not to use these tools, right? Because maybe you do, maybe you don't, but you don't always want to. And ultimately, how to keep learning about these tools. I was talking with the director and some of the staff here at the Dali earlier, and we were asking, what do we teach in my class? And it's about figuring out what are the best tools, what is the best approach, how are you going to do this thing you want to do, right? Because the tools change so fast. The tools changed while I was making this slide deck, which was like a week ago, right? So we can't just teach specific tool workflows like we've been doing forever in Photoshop or Maya or whatever it is, right? We have to teach people how to learn, how to keep learning. And then this is the other big question. Like, how do you grade this? Like, if I turn this into my fine art class, like, what are you going to grade me on? What work did I do? You can't even copyright this thing. Well, okay, that's a really good question. And we're not grading on that output. We're grading on the process that got you there. So I've been working with Professor Joseph Feller at the Cork University Business School in Ireland, also a former Ringling teacher from back in the previous century. I like to start saying that now that it's 2025. I talk about last century a lot. It doesn't make anyone feel old or anything, right? It's my birthday. So we developed this, what we call the 4D framework for AI Fluency. And this is the basis for all of my AI courses. It's the basis for his courses over in Ireland as well. And we're working to sort of spread that out. And so this is our approach. So what do we mean by AI fluency? Our definition is it's the ability to work effectively, efficiently, ethically, and safely with AI tools, right? And we think these are our 4Ds. We think these are the necessary competencies for creative, innovative AI users in the modern era. So delegation, description, discernment, and diligence. So delegation, creative vision and selection of the right AI tools and techniques to realize that vision, right? What do I want to do? Is there a tool for this? You have to know what you want to do before you can start picking tools. So what do we teach? We're teaching the ability to identify when and how to use these tools, to think about that. The ability to understand the capabilities and the limitations of these tools. It's so important, right? I firmly believe that you do not know if AI is useful to you until you try to do something you care about with it, right? You play around with it, you get a sense, oh, it's kind of weird, oh, that's kind of fun, but until you're trying to accomplish something, and you have both the moment of like, oh my gosh, that thing that would have taken me 4 hours took me 4 minutes, and then, oh my gosh, I just need you to do this one thing I keep asking you for. Why don't you do the thing I want? It's in my head. It won't give you the thing in your head, right? But we're teaching how to make informed decisions about when to use AI. These are all skills you can teach. These are all exercises you can do in class and in assignments, right? So maybe use a tool like Public Diffusion coming from Source Plus, right? An AI image generation tool that's trained entirely on public domain and CC0 open content, right? If you want to be more ethically grounded, right? That's a great option. But you have to know where to find those. You have to know those things even exist. Description. This is effectively describing a vision or tasks to prompt useful AI behaviors and outputs. This encompasses what, has anyone heard, who has heard the term prompt crafting? Who read an article in some paper or listicle saying that prompt crafting is the job of the future? I'm here to say, having talked to former professional prompt crafters at big frontier AI companies, that prompt crafters were the first people put out of business by AI. Because AI is really quite a good prompt crafter. But here's what we can teach people in that, right? How to effectively communicate with these tools, and it's different for different tools. For chat tools, it helps to talk to it like a person. For image tools, you want to be a little more technical, so knowing that. How to do these clear, well-structured prompts, but also how to produce desired behaviors over the time interacting with these tools, right? So we're urging people to explore deeper, experiment more, right? I'm a big fan of Anthropic's Claude. If you want my chat LLM recommendation, it's definitely Claude. And they have a great prompt library and things you can learn from. And they'll be launching some educational tools later this year, and the 4D framework for AI Fluency will be part of those. So, little sneak preview about that. Discernment. This, I think, is the new, I mean, it's always been a useful, valuable skill, but this is like the key skill in the age of AI. A word that were I to ask a room of students at my institution, most of them don't know. But let's see a show of hands. Who knows what the word discernment means? All right, great. All right. So, but this ability to accurately assess the usefulness of those AI outputs, right? It'll give you stuff all day long. Never get tired, although you might run out of generation credits and have to give it your credit card again. My wife's here, so we're going to talk about how much I spend a month on AI subscription fees. So we're teaching the ability to evaluate those AI-generated outputs. Understand their quality and their relevance and their biases, like what is this doing? And really, this is key. It's not just looking at the output, but it's understanding the process, having this ongoing cognitive process that you're engaged with the AI as a thought partner. I use it, I'm a very like, I'm going to use it to do a thing, to analyze a thing, to do, like I get in there and we get work done. My colleague, Professor Feller from Ireland, he has long existential conversations with Claude that last days. But they wrote a paper together. It might get published, right? Like he had one Claude talking to another Claude, looking at ideas about our framework and talking things through, right? And it's amazing. And I've read the draft, and it's good and new and original and interesting, right? So there's lots of different ways you can use these tools, right? This is one that has anyone tried Notebook LM from Google? I think it's still free to try, where you can give it documents and talk up to 50 books, right? And talk about those books, and it'll generate a podcast talking about your books. I'm told that if you want to feel good about yourself, put your LinkedIn page into that and have two AIs talk about what a great potential hire you are. So if you're looking for a little uplift, check that out. And then finally, but sometimes at the beginning, right? I've gone through these in an order. But this is not necessarily you do A, B, C, D. You can start at any place. And a lot of times, I start here when I'm giving an assignment. Start with the diligence, taking responsibility and vouching for that final product created using AI, right? And so we're teaching the ability to use it responsibly and make those ethical considerations. To always be transparent about AI use. You can use AI tools in my class for writing. I just want you to tell me about it. There's still a stigma about this. Still students who don't. I'm like, I can tell. I mean, you shouldn't use AI detectors. There's all kinds of problems there. Maybe if there's time we could talk about this. But I can tell when you're not using it well anyway. And I don't care. We need to talk about it. We need to be open about it because that's how we're all going to learn how to use these things ethically and responsibly together. And ultimately, you're taking that accountability to anything you put out into the world that you generated with the help of AI, right? You are the human in this equation, right? You're the one who's putting it out into the world, and that's your responsibility. So, be honest and take responsibility, right? This was made with AI, and I think that's a key thing to do. And there'll be stigmas about it, but though it's much worse when it comes out that you used it and didn't talk about it. And so these are our 4 Ds. These are all available. The summary paper is available on the Ringling College website. I can send a link out to that. And that's the basis for what we're teaching right now. But the question is, what's next? Right? Where does this go? Well, nobody knows for sure. And the other thing that I feel obligated, that I say whenever I'm up on a stage talking to a bunch of people about AI, is that anybody who tells you that they know what's going to happen with AI in 2 years is wrong. None of us know. None of us predicted where we are now 6 months ago. See DeepSeek. I'm sure you've seen that, right? So we don't know. But as I said, these are the least useful these tools will ever be. And they will impact every field of human endeavor. Like we've talked a lot about the art and design world. I'm excited for our students and faculty that it's going to make writing software and coding just accessible to everyone. These things are real good at writing code and are only going to get better. If I'm making like a good 6-figure salary as a computer programmer, that's not particularly good news, right? So it's going to affect everything. So my exhortation is to find the good, to fight the bad, right? And all do our best. So, little promo. We will be having another annual AI symposium on campus. These are almost certainly the dates, subject to change. This is not a contract. But I set up a little Google form here. If you want to fill that out, and that'll just add you to an email list, and I'll keep you informed, right? And I won't use that for anything. I mean, obviously, I'll train my AI on your name and all that. But other than that, I won't be using it for any marketing purposes. Does everyone get that who wants it? All right, all cameras are down. So we have plenty of time for questions. All right. Thank you. So my fellow power user up here in the front. You cannot, well, no. But we are going to be doing an online certificate version that I'm developing. So I'll also send you information about that if you sign up for that thing. So, yeah. Great. So we have a mic, so if other people have questions, Shirley, over here. Wait for the mic. Don't shout it out. We're all going to take it easy. Or I'm going to take a picture of everyone.
So I work with a graphic designer, and he's not up to speed on any of the AI tools, but he really likes the generation process and the concepts it delivers to him. And he's saying, it's pretty good. I can use the concepts, but can I use this image and change it and then take it? Because if you ask AI to do an image and repeat it, you can't use the same creation over and over again, or replicate it for different scenes. So can you take one and modify it and then use it in another tool in the layers, and then you can use that graphic throughout your project?
So yes, mostly, sort of. So there are tools, sort of what I was showing you a very simple version of when I had the picture of the staircase and the other output. So this is that, that struggle for control that I talked about. There are a lot of tools coming out, and they get better every week for using something called a LoRa or a reference, a set, a style guide, where you can get that persistent thing. So yeah, that's what everyone's struggling towards. There are much better tools for that now. You probably have to use one of the other more bespoke, expensive tools. I can give it. Yeah, Marty Murphy.
Hey, folks. One of our classes in virtual reality, Vert 220 for concepting worlds, we use VisCom.
Yes.
And that's the one where we feel like the students are in the driver's seat, iterating on this, and it has heavy use in the product design world as well. Yes, Z. Yeah.
I think,
You
right,
got
it's a
it.
Z, right? VisCom, yeah, VisCom's great, especially for your graphic designer. Look, like for designers who have some skills, and like VisCom is a really powerful tool. Like students like that a lot. Thank you, Marty. Marty teaches at Ringling College of Art and Design.
Along with my colleagues.
Along with your colleagues.
So happy to be here.
Yeah. All right, other questions? Right back in.
I'm not an expert on this, but I just listened to a podcast, so I want.
Hey.
But have you encountered AI poison in images that you try to use? And what do you, if you have, like, what do you think about it? And yeah, any other thoughts on?
Sure. I have never encountered a result that feels like it was poison, but I do know about it, so I'll talk about that tool because I think it's interesting. So there's a couple different tools. There's a new one that just came out. I don't remember the name, but the big one is Nightshade. And Nightshade lets you sort of put a sort of mathematical little sheen over an image, and it messes with the AI robot who's crawling around guiding things, and it mismatches the image and the text. And so the result is that when it's training on that, it's going to produce weird results, right? So the people who make Nightshade have shown examples of how it works. I have never heard from anyone who actually encountered something in the wild that looked like it had been infected by Nightshade. And part of the reason why is that these are trained on millions of images, and there's maybe one in there, right? And another reason is that the companies who make these tools know about these poison tools and are working to mitigate against them. So I can see the appeal. I think if you want to do that to protect your art, I think that's solid. Glaze is another tool that will kind of mess it up. God, what was the one? It was like Venus flytrap or something that just came out, or pitcher plant. It was like the Latin name for pitcher plant, where it's like this poison pool. This one's kind of interesting, where if someone comes and it like, if the robot web crawler that's scraping data comes to your site, it basically gets trapped in a circular link tree and just won't leave. So, there's out there, right? If you think that's a fight worth having, have it. But I have never seen an actual impact of it.
Yeah, the specific use that was discussed was an artist maybe has several works, and then maybe someone takes all of those works to try to create a work that looks like their art.
Yeah.
And so if that particular artist had Nightshade, on all of their works, it would
Right.
make that very difficult or maybe even impossible.
That seems plausible. I'd be happy. I'm interested to look into it. And I think if that use case works, then people who care about it should 100% do that, right? So I think that's interesting. So just to be clear, if you were not using those images to train with your millions, it probably wouldn't make a difference. But if I had taken one of those artists and done what I did, if the Dali had done that with that painting I just ripped, right? And when I put that into Crea to use as an influence, presumably it would have given me garbage results. All right, that's solid. That sounds plausible to me, not an expert in that, but I like it, so I'll look into that. Thank you for that. Other questions? Just stunned silence. We got 1 minute. All right, here we go.
So thanks for your talk, Rick. We are so lucky to have you at Ringling College. My question is, I am going to ask you the question you didn't want us to ask,
Sure.
which is, what's going to happen 5 years from now?
Okay.
No one has the right answer, but you clearly are an expert in the field. You're watching and waiting. I know you're an avid reader of science fiction, which may inform your answer. But what is going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years?
So, all right. Keeping in mind, I don't think science fiction is good at or should try to predict the future, but that's a different topic. I think it's gonna be rough and exciting, but rough, right? This is a time of disruption, and we've seen these before. Steam engine, internet. This is happening so fast that it's gonna be bad for some people, and it's gonna be good for some people. I don't think there's any indication that those numbers will be equal, right? It maybe will be good for more people than it's bad for, but in the short term, I think some people will lose some jobs, and here's why I think that. We all saw NVIDIA, maybe we didn't, but NVIDIA lost $600 billion in market cap when this Chinese tool, DeepSeek, was released. I believe they've recovered some of that. And obviously the stock market is just full of emotion and panic and whatever, right? But it does indicate a thing. I'll give you a more exact answer. So companies are thinking of these tools the way they thought of automation tools all along. This is a way to automate, to cut costs, to lay people off, right? To have somebody else do the work. And I don't think that's the right ultimate answer. I think these tools, as augmenting tools, have a lot of potential, a lot of capability, right, with a human in the loop, a centaur or a cyborg, as people, those are not my terms, talk about AI workers. But I think we'll see this disruption where people lay off a bunch of stuff. We've seen some of it already, try to get by with just AI, and then they'll start losing market share to people using AI. That's my hope. But I think also what we all do with this is going to change. So Marty comes out of the game industry back there. I think this will be disruptive in that field, in a field like movies or video game production where it costs hundreds of millions of dollars to make these big marquee games. Already those industries are straining under that weight. And so I think these efficiencies could change the size of teams, and maybe we get fewer people doing more and we get more variety. And that could be cool, but how will everybody make a living in that? I don't know, we'll have to see, right? I think it's not the best sign in the world, as lovely as it sounds, that the big AI people are also big fans of universal basic income, something I am also a fan of. But if their answer is, what's going to save us in the AI future? Universal basic income? I think we can all see that there's a lot of barriers in the road between where we are now and universal basic income, and that AI is going to move much faster than that. And then if artificial general intelligence comes and these things can do all the things a human can do and more, how disruptive that will be to the economy is firmly in the category of I don't know. But all the people who are making these say it'll be a big deal. And how do we adjust to that? I think there's always going to be room for creativity and for humans to express themselves and to make human connections. But I think all of that's going to involve AI too. Not all of it, right? People will still get together and have their bowling league or whatever. But you know, the balls will talk back to you. You'll just have to talk it, prompt it. It'll roll down, tell it how many pins you want to hit. All right, I think I'm at time. Thank you, guys. All right.